The night my eldest daughter collapsed at the dinner table, foaming at the mouth, everyone knew who to blame. Diana, the maid who just served her tea, the same maid who'd fixed the gardener a sandwich the day he died, screaming in agony. The police called it a pattern. My son called her a monster, and I, an old man already broken by grief, let myself believe we'd found the evil poisoning my family from the inside. But here's what no one understood. In my house, nothing was ever as simple as it looked. Because the day Diana confessed what she'd really seen in my mansion, the entire story flipped on its head, and the real nightmare finally stepped into the light. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, this story's going to hit different. Before we get into it, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me what part of the world you're watching from. It matters to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Lawrence Mitchell. I'm 73 years old now. But when this all happened, I was 68. I lived in a mansion in Buckhead, Atlanta, one of those old properties with columns out front and enough rooms that you could go days without seeing everyone in the house. I made my money buying and selling companies. Started with nothing, built everything. But money can't buy you wisdom, and it damn sure can't buy you peace. This is the story of how I almost lost everything that mattered because I was too lonely to see the snake sleeping in my bed. Let me take you back to before the nightmare. Back when my biggest problem was being happy. I had it all. You understand? 3 beautiful children, 2 daughters and a son. Melissa was 25, the eldest, smart as a whip, just finished her MBA. Then came Brandon, 23, working with me in the business, learning the ropes. And my baby Jasmine, 22, still finding herself talking about maybe going to law school. And my wife, Dorothy. God, my Dorothy. We'd been married 32 years when she passed. Dorothy wasn't just my wife. She was my business partner, my best friend, the only person who knew me when I had nothing. We built that mansion together, brick by brick, deal by deal. She kept me humble when the money started coming in, kept me focused when I wanted to quit, kept me sane when the pressure got too heavy. The house back then felt alive. Dorothy had this way of making every room feel warm. Fresh flowers every Monday, music playing in the kitchen. Sunday dinners where all the kids had to show up, no exceptions. Our chauffeur Marcus had been with us 15 years. Our maid Betty, 20 years. They weren't just employees, they were family. Marcus taught Brandon how to drive. Betty taught the girls how to make Dorothy's famous peach cobbler. Then Dorothy got sick, started with fatigue. Then came the pain. By the time they found the cancer, it had already spread everywhere. 6 months, they said. She lasted 4. I watched the strongest woman I ever knew fade away in that big bedroom upstairs. Watched her lose her hair, her strength, her voice, but never her spirit. Even at the end, she was worried about me, about the kids, about who was going to take care of everybody when she was gone. "Promise me something, Lawrence," she said one night, maybe 2 weeks before she passed. Her voice was barely a whisper. I had to lean in close to hear her. "Promise me you won't shut down. Don't close yourself off from the world. Don't let this house become a tomb." I promised her through tears I couldn't hold back. Promised her while holding her hand, feeling how light she'd become, how fragile. She died on a Tuesday morning in April, springtime, her favorite season. The funeral was the biggest Buckhead had seen in years. Hundreds of people showed up to pay respects. Dorothy had touched so many lives, built community centers, funded scholarships, fed the homeless every Thanksgiving. After we buried her, the house changed. The music stopped. The flowers stopped. Those Sunday dinners stopped. Melissa threw herself into her work, barely came by. Brandon started staying out late, I think avoiding the memories. Jasmine locked herself in her room most days, crying when she thought nobody could hear. And me? I wandered those halls like a ghost. 5,200 square feet of house, and every inch of it screamed her name. I'd walk into the kitchen and expect to see her cooking. I'd wake up reaching for her side of the bed. I'd hear a laugh somewhere in the house and think it was her, just for a second, before reality crashed back in. Marcus and Betty both retired within 2 months of Dorothy's funeral. Marcus said his arthritis was getting too bad to drive. Betty said she wanted to spend time with her grandchildren. But I knew the truth. This house held too many memories for them too. Without Dorothy, it wasn't the same. So there I was, 67 years old, three grown children who were processing their own grief, a mansion that felt more like a mausoleum, and a loneliness so deep I could feel it in my bones. That's when I made the biggest mistake of my life. I decided I needed to fill the void. I met Lori at a charity gala 6 months after Dorothy died. I almost didn't go. Melissa had to practically drag me out of the house. "Daddy, Mama wouldn't want you sitting here every night staring at her pictures," she said. "Come on, just for a couple hours." The gala was at the Ritz-Carlton downtown. One of those fancy affairs where everyone's dressed in $1,000 outfits, pretending to care about whatever cause is being celebrated that night. I was standing by the bar, nursing a whiskey, counting the minutes until I could leave without being rude. That's when I saw her, Lori Henderson. 48 years old, though she looked younger. Tall, elegant, with this smile that lit up the whole room. She was wearing a red dress, not Dorothy's style at all, which maybe is why I noticed her. She was laughing with a group of women, and something about the sound made me look twice. Our eyes met across the room. She smiled. I smiled back, feeling foolish, like a teenager at his first dance. She walked over. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," she said. Her voice was smooth, confident. "I'm Lori." "Lawrence," I said, shaking her hand. "And you're right. I hate these things." "So why come?" "My daughter made me, said I needed to get out of the house." "Smart daughter." She leaned against the bar next to me. "I lost my husband 3 years ago. Heart attack. I know that look you're wearing, that I'm here but I'm not really here look." And just like that, we started talking, really talking, about loss, about loneliness, about how people expect you to move on but don't understand that grief doesn't have a timeline. She got it. She understood in a way my kids couldn't, in a way my friends didn't. We talked for 2 hours. When the gala ended, I asked for her number. She gave it to me without hesitation. We started seeing each other. Coffee dates first, then dinners, then walks in Piedmont Park. She was easy to be with, didn't demand anything, didn't try to replace Dorothy, just listened. Made me laugh, made me feel like maybe I could be happy again. The kids were skeptical at first, especially Melissa. "Daddy, don't you think this is too fast?" she asked one Sunday when I mentioned I was bringing Lori to dinner. "Mama's only been gone 8 months." "Melissa, baby, I'm not trying to replace your mother," I told her. "Nobody could ever do that. But I'm lonely, and Lori makes me feel less alone. Can you understand that?" She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. I introduced Lori to the kids that Sunday. It was awkward, I won't lie. Jasmine barely spoke. Brandon was polite but distant. Melissa asked questions that felt more like an interrogation than conversation. But Lori handled it all with grace. She didn't try too hard, didn't overstep, just was herself. Over the next few months, she became part of my life. She'd come over for dinner. We'd watch movies in the home theater. She'd sit with me in Dorothy's garden, though I didn't think of it as Dorothy's anymore. The kids slowly warmed up to her, not because they loved her, but because they saw me smiling again. A year after Dorothy died, I asked Lori to marry me. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. But when you're drowning in loneliness, you grab onto any life raft that comes your way. You don't stop to check if it has holes. Lori said yes. We got married 3 months later in a small ceremony. Just immediate family. I didn't want anything big out of respect for Dorothy's memory. Lori understood. Or at least, she said she did. The day she moved into the mansion, she walked through every room like she owned the place. "We should redecorate," she said. "Give this place a fresh start." Something in my gut twisted, but I pushed it down. Change is good, I told myself. Dorothy would want me to move forward. That was the first red flag. I just didn't see it yet. Lori moved in with 2 suitcases and a smile that promised new beginnings. Within 3 weeks, she'd rearranged half the house. Dorothy's flowers? Gone. "Too much maintenance," Lori said. The music system Dorothy loved? Replaced with a newer model that Lori controlled from her phone. The pictures of Dorothy that used to hang in the hallways moved to a storage room so we can create our own memories. Every change felt like a small death. But I didn't fight her. Maybe because part of me thought she was right. Maybe I needed to let go. Maybe holding on to Dorothy's things was keeping me stuck in the past. The kids noticed, though. Especially Jasmine. "Daddy, "Why are all Mama's things gone?" she asked one day when she came to visit. She was standing in the living room, looking at where Dorothy's favorite painting used to hang. Now there was some abstract piece Lori had bought at an art gallery. "We're just making some changes, baby girl," I said, feeling defensive even though I agreed with her. "It's healthy to move forward." "Moving forward and erasing Mama are two different things," Jasmine said quietly. Then she left without staying for dinner. But the biggest change came 2 weeks after Lori moved in. She was sitting at the breakfast table one morning, scrolling through her phone, when she looked up at me with this casual expression. "We need to hire new staff," she said, like she was commenting on the weather. I looked up from my newspaper. "What?" "A new chauffeur and maid. This house is too big for me to manage alone, and you work too much to drive yourself everywhere." "Lori, we don't really need Lawrence." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her touch was warm, her eyes soft. "I want to take care of you. Take care of this house. Let me do this, please." Something about the way she said it made me feel guilty for hesitating. Like I wasn't appreciating her efforts, like I was being difficult. "Okay," I said. "If it'll make you happy." She smiled that megawatt smile. "It will. Trust me." She hired them within a week. First came the chauffeur, a man named David Ross, 34 years old, tall, good-looking in that way that probably made him popular in high school. He had a smooth way of talking, always had a joke ready. I appreciated that he was professional, always on time, never complained. What I didn't know then was that Lori had interviewed him privately, 3 times, before I ever met him. Then came the maid, Diana Washington, 42 years old, dark skin, quiet demeanor. She came with excellent references, worked for wealthy families in Buckhead her whole career, never missed a day, never caused problems. She started the same week David did. Diana was the opposite of Betty. Where Betty had been warm and chatty, always humming gospel songs while she cleaned, Diana was reserved, polite but distant. She did her job efficiently and then disappeared into the background. That should have been fine. That's what maids are supposed to do. But something about her made me uncomfortable. Maybe it was how she watched everything, how her eyes tracked people's movements, how she seemed to be cataloging information even when she wasn't part of the conversation. "She's perfect," Lori said when I mentioned my unease. "Stop being paranoid, Lawrence. You're just used to Betty. Give Diana time." So I did. I pushed down my instincts and gave her time. Meanwhile, David became Lori's shadow. Every time she needed to go shopping, David drove her. Every time she had lunch with friends, David drove her. Every time she had a spa appointment or a hair appointment or any of the million reasons she left the house, David drove her. "Doesn't she drive herself anymore?" Brandon asked one day. We were in my home office going over quarterly reports for one of the companies. "She says she doesn't like Atlanta traffic," I replied, not looking up from the spreadsheet. "Dad." Brandon's voice made me look up. He had this expression, worried, uncertain, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. "Don't you think it's weird how much time she spends with David?" "Brandon, he's her chauffeur. That's literally his job." "I know, but..." He stopped himself, shook his head. "Never mind. Forget I said anything." But the seed was planted. And over the next few weeks, I started noticing things. How Lori would laugh differently when David was around. How she'd touch his arm when giving him instructions. How they'd have these quick, quiet conversations that would stop the moment anyone walked into the room. I told myself I was being paranoid. Lori wasn't Dorothy, and that was okay. She was allowed to be friendly with the staff. She was allowed to have her own way of running the household. But deep down, in that place where your gut knows the truth before your brain wants to accept it, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong until that night, 3 months later, when Diana saw something she wasn't supposed to see. It was a Thursday night in October. I remember because I was supposed to be home, but a deal I'd been working on for months was falling apart. I had to fly to Dallas for an emergency meeting. Left the house at 4 in the afternoon, told Lori I'd be back Saturday morning. "Be safe," she said, kissing me at the door. "I'll miss you." I should have noticed how quickly she smiled after I left, how eager she seemed to see me go. But I was too focused on saving a $20 million acquisition. According to Diana, and I didn't hear this story until much later, This is what happened that night. Diana was finishing her shift around 9 p.m. She'd cleaned the entire first floor, done the laundry, and was about to head to her quarters in the back house when she realized she'd left her phone charger in the upstairs linen closet. She went up to get it, moving quietly the way she always did, like she was trying not to disturb the air itself. As she walked past Lori's bedroom, our bedroom, technically, but I still thought of it as Dorothy's room, my room, she heard sounds, not normal sounds, not TV sounds or music sounds, sounds that made her stop in her tracks. Diana told me later she should have walked away, should have minded her business. But curiosity is a powerful thing. She moved closer to the door. It was cracked open, just slightly, just enough. What she saw through that crack changed everything. Lori was in bed, but she wasn't alone. David was with her, our chauffeur, the man I paid to drive my wife around. They were tangled together, naked, laughing between kisses like they'd been doing this forever. Like it was the most natural thing in the world to betray the man who gave them both jobs, a home, trust. Diana stood there frozen. She said later she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She'd worked for wealthy families her whole life, seen things, kept secrets. But this felt different. This felt cruel. That's when Lori's eyes opened and looked straight at the door. Straight at Diana. "Oh my God," Lori screamed, grabbing the sheets. David jumped up, scrambling for his clothes, but the damage was done. They'd been caught. Diana ran, literally ran down the hallway toward the stairs. But Lori was faster. She came flying out of that room wearing nothing but a robe, hair wild, eyes blazing with something Diana later described as pure rage mixed with fear. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Lori screamed. Her voice echoed through the entire mansion. "You were spying on me. You perverted, disgusting." "I wasn't spying." Diana backed away, hands up. "I was just getting my charger. I didn't mean." "You didn't mean to watch through the door? You didn't mean to violate my privacy?" Lori was in her face now, jabbing a finger at her chest. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my husband is? I could have you arrested right now." Diana was crying. She told me her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't make fists. "Mrs. Mitchell, please, I'm sorry. I didn't see anything. I won't say anything to anyone. Please." "You're damn right you won't say anything." Lori's voice dropped to something cold, something threatening. "Because if you do, I'll make sure you never work in this city again. I'll tell everyone you're a thief, a liar, a peeping Tom. You'll be lucky to get a job cleaning toilets at a gas station. Do you understand me?" Diana nodded, still crying, and ran to her quarters. She locked herself in and didn't come out until morning. When I called Lori that night from my hotel in Dallas, she sounded perfectly normal. Sweet even. Asked how the meeting went. Told me she missed me. Said she couldn't wait for me to come home. I had no idea my marriage was already over. That my wife had been unfaithful probably since the moment David walked through our door. That there was a terrified woman in my back house who'd just seen my entire life for the lie it was. When I got home Saturday morning, everything seemed normal. Lori kissed me at the door. Diana was cleaning the kitchen, eyes down, not saying a word. David was washing the car outside, whistling some song I didn't recognize. Perfect. Normal. Fine. But under the surface, Diana was planning how to tell someone, anyone, what she'd seen, planning how to help the kind old man who'd hired her without knowing his wife was making a fool of him. She had no idea that her plans would almost cost her her life. His name was Marcus Riley. Not the same Marcus who used to be our chauffeur, different guy entirely. This Marcus was 61 years old, had been taking care of the mansion's grounds for almost 8 years. He knew every plant, every tree, every flower bed. Dorothy used to say he had magic hands because everything he touched grew beautiful. Marcus was quiet, kept to himself mostly, but he was observant, the kind of man who noticed things others missed. 3 days after Diana saw Lori with David, she finally worked up the courage to tell someone. She caught Marcus while he was pruning the rose bushes near the back porch. These were Dorothy's roses, the only things Lori hadn't managed to remove yet. "Can I talk to you?" Diana asked, her voice low. She kept looking over her shoulder, like she expected Lori to appear out of thin air. Marcus straightened up, wiping sweat from his forehead. It was early November, but still warm in Atlanta. "What's on your mind, Diana?" They sat on the back steps. Diana told him everything. About the night I was gone. About what she saw through the cracked door. About how Lori threatened her. About how scared she was, but how she couldn't stay quiet. Mr. Mitchell's a good man, Diana said. He deserves to know the truth. Marcus listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That's a heavy thing you're carrying. But you're right. He needs to know. Question is, how do we tell him without Lori finding out we know?" They agreed to talk again later. Agreed to come up with a plan. Marcus said he'd think about the best way to approach me. Said he wanted to be careful because accusations like this could blow up in their faces if they weren't handled right. That conversation happened around 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. By 5 p.m., Marcus was clutching his stomach in agony. I was in my office when I heard the commotion, screaming, running. I came out to find David and one of the other staff members practically carrying Marcus toward the front door. His face was gray. Sweat poured down his face. He was moaning, doubled over, holding his abdomen like someone had stabbed him. "What happened?" I demanded. "I don't know," David said, and I remember thinking later how good he was at lying, how calm he sounded. "We found him like this by the garden shed. He just collapsed." "Call 911. I barked at Diana, who was standing frozen in the doorway. She snapped to attention and ran for the phone. Lori appeared at the top of the stairs. "What's all the noise?" "Marcus is sick, really sick." I followed them as they got him to the driveway. The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later. Fastest 7 minutes of my life and the longest. Marcus was conscious, but barely. Kept trying to say something, but couldn't get the words out past the pain. They loaded him into the ambulance. I told them I'd follow in my car. But by the time I got to Piedmont Hospital, Marcus was in the ICU. By midnight, he was dead. The doctor came out looking confused and exhausted. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said. "We did everything we could, but the poisoning was too severe. His organs started shutting down within hours." Poisoning? I felt like I'd been punched. "What do you mean poisoning?" "Food poisoning. Severe. Possibly from contaminated food, but we won't know until we get the toxicology report back." "Did he eat anything unusual today?" I didn't know. I hadn't seen Marcus since that morning when I waved at him while he was weeding the front flower beds. He'd waved back, smiled, looked healthy, normal. Now he was dead. I drove home in a daze. It was almost 2 in the morning when I walked through the door. Lori was waiting up for me in the living room, wearing one of her silk robes, a glass of wine in her hand. "How is he?" she asked softly. "Dead," she gasped. Put a hand over her mouth. "Oh my God, Lawrence, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. What happened?" "They said food poisoning. Severe." "Food poisoning? From what?" "They don't know yet." I sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling every one of my 68 years. I can't believe this. Marcus has worked here for almost a decade, never sick a day. And now. Lori sat next to me, rubbing my back. "These things happen, honey. Sometimes people just get unlucky. Maybe he ate something at a restaurant. Maybe it was something at home." She was saying all the right things, offering all the right comfort, but something felt off, something in her tone. Too calm, too practiced. "Where's Diana?" I asked suddenly. "In her quarters, I assume. Why?" "She was here when it happened. I want to talk to her." "Lawrence, it's 2 in the morning. Let the poor woman sleep. You can talk to her tomorrow." But I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus, about how sudden it was, about how he'd been fine one moment and dying the next, about the timing. The next morning I tried to talk to Diana, but she wouldn't look me in the eye. When I asked if she knew anything about what Marcus might have eaten, she just shook her head and whispered, "No, sir, I don't know anything." She was lying. I could feel it, but I didn't know why. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't know until much later, was that Diana had made Marcus a sandwich that afternoon. Just a simple turkey sandwich. She'd made it in the kitchen around 1 p.m., brought it out to him while he was working. A kind gesture, a friendly gesture. But Diana hadn't made that sandwich alone. Lori had been in the kitchen, had watched Diana make it, had asked what she was doing. And then, when Diana stepped out to get the iced tea from the garage fridge, Lori had added a little something extra to Marcus's sandwich, something that would kill him slowly and painfully, because dead men tell no tales. And Lori couldn't risk Marcus telling me what Diana had told him. At Marcus's funeral 3 days later, I stood there thinking it was just a tragic accident. Just bad luck. Just one of those horrible things that happen sometimes. I had no idea that I was standing next to a murderer, that the woman holding my hand and dabbing at fake tears had just committed the first of what would become multiple murders in my own home. The devil really does wear many faces. Sometimes she wears expensive perfume and designer dresses. Sometimes she cries at funerals for the people she killed. 2 weeks after Marcus died, life had started to feel normal again. Or as normal as it could feel after losing someone so suddenly. I'd hired a new gardener, a young guy named Carlos who came highly recommended. The roses were already looking better under his care. Melissa had come by more often since Marcus's death. I think it shook her, reminded her that life is fragile, that you can't take time with family for granted. She'd started dropping by for Sunday dinners again, started staying longer, talking more, laughing at my old jokes even though they weren't funny. That Sunday afternoon, Melissa was sitting in the sunroom with Lori. They'd never been close, but they were making an effort. I appreciated that. I'd been in my office working on some contracts when I heard Lori call out, "Lawrence, I'm making tea. Do you want some?" "No thanks," I called back. I'd already had 3 cups of coffee. Any more caffeine and I'd be up all night. I heard the kettle whistle, heard the clinking of china cups, heard Lori and Melissa's voices. Lori saying something I couldn't quite make out, Melissa laughing in response. It was nice, domestic, the kind of moment that made me think maybe this blended family thing could actually work. 15 minutes later, I heard a crash. I ran out of my office and into the sunroom. Melissa was on the floor. The teacup had fallen from her hand and shattered on the hardwood. She was convulsing, her body jerking violently, foam coming from her mouth. "Melissa!" I dropped to my knees beside her. "Baby, what's wrong? What's happening?" Lori was standing frozen by the tea cart, hand over her mouth, eyes wide. "I don't know. She was fine 1 second, and then—" "Call 911, I screamed. I rolled Melissa onto her side, trying to remember what you're supposed to do during a seizure. Her eyes had rolled back in her head. Her skin was turning gray. David came running in. He'd been in the garage waxing the car. "What happened?" "I don't know. She collapsed. Help me get her to the car. No, wait, the ambulance." I couldn't think straight. My daughter was dying in my arms and I couldn't think. The ambulance came. The paramedics worked fast. They got an IV in her arm, got her on oxygen, loaded her onto the stretcher. One of them looked at me and asked, "Did she eat or drink anything recently?" "Just tea," Lori said quickly. Too quickly. "I made her tea. Chamomile. Nothing unusual." "We need to take that tea, Ninny," the paramedic said. "And anything else she consumed in the last 2 hours." They took the tea, the broken cup, the rest of the tea from the pot, all of it bagged and tagged like evidence at a crime scene. I rode with Melissa in the ambulance, held her hand, prayed harder than I prayed since Dorothy's last days. "Please, God, please don't take my little girl, please." At the hospital, they rushed her straight to the ICU. I sat in that waiting room for 5 hours before a doctor finally came out. Her face told me everything before she said a word. "Mr. Mitchell, your daughter is in a coma. We've stabilized her, but she's not responsive. Her organs are showing signs of acute toxicity. We're running tests now, but based on the symptoms and the rapid onset, we believe she was poisoned." The world stopped. Poisoned. That word again. First Marcus, now Melissa. What kind of poison? My voice sounded strange. Distant. "We don't know yet. The toxicology reports will take 24 to 48 hours. But Mr. Mitchell," she hesitated, "given that one of your employees died from poisoning just 2 weeks ago, I have to ask, is there someone who might want to harm people in your household?" I couldn't answer, because the thought that was forming in my mind was too horrible to speak out loud. Someone was poisoning people in my home. Someone with access. Someone who could slip something into food or drink without being noticed. My son Brandon arrived within the hour. He burst into the ICU waiting room, out of breath, tears streaming down his face. "Where is she? How is she?" I told him. Watched his face go through the same shock, the same disbelief I'd felt. Then he said something that changed everything. "Diana served Melissa that tea." "What?" "Diana brought the tea cart into the sunroom. I saw her when I was leaving earlier. She set up everything, the cups, the pot, the sugar. Then Lori poured. The pieces started clicking into place. Diana had been around when Marcus died. Diana had made him that sandwich. Now Diana had set up the tea. Both victims had consumed something Diana touched right before they got sick. Brandon grabbed my arm. Dad, what if Diana's poisoning people? What if she's some kind of, I don't know, serial killer or something? Brandon, but I couldn't finish the sentence because it made horrible sense. Diana, who was always watching, always quiet, always there. Lori arrived at the hospital 30 minutes later, mascara running, looking distraught. She hugged me, hugged Brandon. How is she? Tell me she's okay. Please tell me she's okay. She's in a coma, Brandon said coldly, and we think Diana did it. Lori's eyes went wide. Diana? The maid? She's the only common factor, Brandon continued. She was there when Marcus got sick. She set up Melissa's tea. Dad, we need to call the police. We need to have her arrested before she hurts anyone else. I sat there listening to my son, looking at my wife, thinking about my daughter lying in a coma 3 rooms away, and I felt something break inside me. My home had become a murder scene. My family was being picked off one by one, and I hadn't seen it coming. I'll call the police, I said quietly. Then I looked at Lori, searched her face for I don't even know what, some sign that she knew more than she was saying. But all I saw was concern, fear, the face of a woman worried about her stepdaughter, the face of a damn good actress. Because what I didn't know, what none of us knew yet, was that Lori had slipped the poison into Melissa's tea while Diana was in the next room. Had done it right there at the tea cart, smooth as silk, while Diana's back was turned. Had set Diana up to take the fall, just like she'd set her up with Marcus's sandwich. And Diana, terrified and confused, knowing what she'd seen but unable to prove it, was about to become the prime suspect in 2 attempted murders she didn't commit. The police came that night. 2 detectives, a woman named Martinez and a man named Chen. They took statements from everyone. Brandon told them about Diana being present both times. I told them about the timing, the coincidences that felt too deliberate to be accidents. Detective Martinez looked at me with sympathetic eyes. Mr. Mitchell, we'll need to bring Diana in for questioning. Given the pattern, we have enough for probable cause. They left around midnight to find Diana. I went home with Lori, leaving Brandon at the hospital with Melissa. Someone needed to stay with her. Someone needed to be there when she woke up. At home, I found Diana in her quarters. She was packing a bag. Where are you going? I asked from the doorway. She jumped, hand flying to her chest. Mr. Mitchell, she couldn't finish. She just stood there holding a half-folded shirt, tears streaming down her face. Diana, the police need to talk to you about Marcus, about Melissa. I didn't do anything. Her voice was so small, so broken. I swear to God, Mr. Mitchell, I didn't poison anyone. I don't know what's happening. I'm scared. Something in her face made me pause. Fear, yes, but not guilt. Not the look of someone caught. The look of someone trapped. Then why are you packing? Because I knew they'd blame me. The words came out in a rush. I knew it would look bad. Marcus's sandwich, Melissa's tea. I was there both times, but I didn't do it. You have to believe me, I didn't. She collapsed. Right there in her quarters, she collapsed. At first, I thought she'd fainted from stress. I ran to her, called for Lori. But then I saw the foam at Diana's mouth. The way her body was convulsing. The exact same way Melissa had convulsed. Oh God! Oh God, no! I rolled her onto her side, screaming for help. Lori appeared in the doorway, saw Diana, and her hand flew to her mouth. What happened? Lori asked. I don't know. She just collapsed. Call an ambulance. Now! For the second time in one day, paramedics rushed to my house. For the second time, I watched someone get loaded into an ambulance after being poisoned. But this time, the person being loaded was the prime suspect. At the hospital, they pumped Diana's stomach, ran tests, confirmed what I already suspected. Same poison, same dosage, same method. Detective Martinez came to the hospital after receiving the call. She looked exhausted. I don't understand, she said, standing with me outside Diana's room. If Diana's the one poisoning people, why would she poison herself? She didn't. The realization hit me like cold water. Someone's setting her up. Someone wants us to think Diana's the killer. Who? Martinez asked. Who else has access? I thought about my household. Lori, David, Carlos, the new gardener. Brandon lived in his own place across town. Jasmine was off at college. The cleaning service came once a week, different people each time. I don't know, I admitted, but that was a lie, because there was one person who'd been present at every poisoning. One person who'd been the last to handle the food or drink before each victim consumed it. But I couldn't say her name, couldn't even think it properly, because saying it would mean admitting I'd married another monster, that I'd let someone into my home, into my bed, into my life who was capable of murder. Lori arrived at the hospital an hour later. She was wearing sweatpants and one of my hoodies, dressed like she'd left the house in a hurry. Her hair was messy, no makeup. She looked vulnerable, worried. "Is Diana okay?" she asked, taking my hand. "They think she'll survive. They got to her in time." "Thank God." Lori leaned against me. "This is insane, Lawrence. First Marcus, then Melissa, now Diana? What's happening to us?" To us, like we were victims together, like she was going through this alongside me instead of causing it. "I don't know," I said, but I was starting to piece it together, starting to see the pattern. Diana had seen something, had tried to tell Marcus. Marcus died. Diana tried to tell Melissa. Maybe that's why Melissa came by more often lately, why she and Diana had been talking in the kitchen that morning before the tea. Melissa gets poisoned. Diana was the only witness to something important. Something that would destroy Lori if it got out. Then Diana poisons herself? No. Someone poisoned Diana to silence her, to make her look crazy, to make her look like a disturbed woman having some kind of mental breakdown. "Lori, where were you when Diana collapsed?" I asked suddenly. She pulled back, looking confused. "What? I was upstairs, in our bedroom." "Why? And where was David?" "Lawrence, what are you? Where was David?" My voice was harder now. "I don't know. In the garage? In his quarters?" "Why does it matter?" "Because David was always around, always nearby, always within reach when Lori needed something done. Like a shadow, like an accomplice." I didn't say this out loud, just filed it away, started building a case in my mind, started seeing my wife clearly for the first time since I'd met her. Diana woke up 2 days later. The police were waiting to question her. But before they could, she asked to speak to me privately. Detective Martinez allowed it, but stayed in the room, standing by the door. Diana looked terrible. Gray skin, sunken eyes, IV lines running into both arms. But when she spoke, her voice was clear. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you weeks ago." She glanced at the detective, then back at me. "The night you went to Dallas, I saw Mrs. Mitchell. I saw her with David, in your bed. They were," she couldn't finish. Didn't need to. The air left the room. Detective Martinez stepped forward. "You're saying Mrs. Mitchell and the chauffeur are having an affair?" "Yes." Diana's voice was stronger now, like she'd been waiting to say this for so long that it physically hurt to hold it in anymore. "And after I saw them, I tried to tell Marcus. That's when he got poisoned. Then I started talking to Miss Melissa about it, asking her advice on what to do. That's when she got poisoned. Then I tried to leave, to get away before something happened to me. And," she gestured to herself, to the hospital room, to the evidence of what something looked like. "This is insane," Lori said from behind me. I hadn't heard her come in. "You're insane. Lawrence, she's lying. She's making this up to cover for what she did." "Am I?" Diana stared at Lori with no fear left in her eyes. She'd already been poisoned, already nearly died. What else could Lori do to her? "Am I lying about the red nightgown you were wearing? The one with the lace trim? Or how David has that tattoo on his left shoulder of a cross? Or how you kept saying his name over and over while you—" "Enough." I cut her off. Not because I didn't believe her, because I did. Every word, every horrible detail, and I couldn't hear anymore, couldn't bear to have the truth spelled out so clearly. I turned to look at Lori, my wife, the woman I trusted, the woman I'd let into my home, my life, my children's lives. "Is it true?" "Of course not. She's delusional. Lawrence, you can't possibly believe." "Is it true?" I asked again, my voice like iron. Lori's face changed. The mask slipped, just for a second. But it was enough. I saw the calculation behind her eyes, saw her weighing her options, saw the moment she realized she'd been caught. "Lawrence," she started, but I'd already left the room, already walked away. Because if I'd stayed one more second, I don't know what I would have done. And I'm not a violent man. Never have been. But in that moment, looking at the woman who'd poisoned 3 people to cover up her affair, I felt something dark rise up in me. something I didn't recognize. I called my lawyer from the hospital lobby. Then I called a private investigator because the police needed evidence and I was going to make damn sure they got it. My daughter was in a coma. My maid had barely survived. My gardener was dead. All because I'd been too lonely to see who Lori really was. But I saw it now, and I was going to make sure everyone else saw it too. I hired the best private investigator in Atlanta. Name was Richard Cole, former FBI. Left the bureau after 20 years to start his own firm. He cost $500 an hour. I didn't care. I would have paid $5,000. Find me everything, I told him in his office the next morning. I want to know every place she's been, every call she's made, every person she's talked to. I want evidence so concrete that no lawyer in the world can get her off. Richard leaned back in his chair, studying me. Mr. Mitchell, are you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes in cases like this, we find things clients wish they'd never learned, things that hurt more than the initial betrayal. My daughter is in a coma, I said flatly. One of my employees is dead. Another barely survived. I don't care what you find. I need the truth. Fair enough. He opened a laptop. Tell me everything. From the beginning. So I did. Told him about meeting Lori, about the whirlwind romance, about Diana seeing the affair, about all 3 poisonings. I watched Richard take notes, his face expressionless, professional. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'll need access to your house, specifically to Lori's things, phone, computer, documents. Can you get me in without her knowing? She's been at the hospital with me for the past 2 days, keeping up appearances. The house is empty except for Carlos and David. The chauffeur needs to go. Send him on an errand, somewhere far. I need at least 4 hours uninterrupted. I made it happen. Told David I needed him to drive to Athens, 2 hours away, to pick up some important documents from a business partner. He left within the hour. Carlos was working on the grounds, nowhere near the house. Richard brought a team, 3 people total. They went through Lori's belongings like surgeons, careful and thorough. They found her phone. She'd left it charging in the kitchen, probably thought she'd need it less at the hospital. They cloned it. Found her laptop in our bedroom. Cloned that too. This'll take a few days to sort through, Richard said as he packed up. But if there's evidence, we'll find it. He called me 3 days later. You need to come to my office, now, and bring your lawyer. I knew from his voice he'd found something big. In his office, Richard had papers spread across his desk like a crime board, photos, phone records, bank statements, and in the center, a laptop displaying dozens of text messages. Your wife is smarter than most, Richard began. She used encrypted apps for most of her communication with David, but encrypted doesn't mean untraceable. We broke through. These messages go back 6 months, 3 months before your first wife died. The words hit me like a freight train. Before Dorothy died? That's impossible. I didn't even know Lori then. She knew you. Richard turned the laptop toward me. Look at this. Messages between Lori and David from April last year. I read. Found him, Lawrence Mitchell, widower in Buckhead, worth $200 million minimum, 3 kids. David, how'd you find him? Lori, charity circuit. His wife is dying. Cancer. I'll wait until after the funeral. Give him time to be vulnerable. You're cold. I'm practical. We need this money, baby. Last husband didn't work out, but this one will. I can feel it. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My lawyer Thomas put a hand on my shoulder. Lawrence, sit down. But I couldn't sit. I read message after message, plans, schemes. Lori describing how she'd accidentally bumped into me at that gala, how she'd researched everything about me, my business, my kids, my late wife, how she knew exactly what to say to make me think she understood my grief, because she'd done this before. Richard slid another folder across the desk. Lori Henderson, real name Lori Watson, married 3 times before you. First husband died in a boating accident. She inherited everything. Second husband divorced her after 2 years, but she got a hefty settlement. Third husband, he paused. Third husband died of a mysterious illness, symptoms consistent with poisoning. She inherited his estate, but the police couldn't prove anything. Oh my God. Thomas was reading over my shoulder. She's been doing this, over and over. And David Ross, I asked, how does he fit in? They've been together for 6 years, on and off. He helps her identify marks, helps her set up the schemes. Sometimes he plays the chauffeur, sometimes the gardener, sometimes the pool boy. Whatever role gets him closest to the money. The room was spinning. Everything I believed about my marriage was a lie. Lori never loved me, never cared. I was just another Mark, another rich old man to seduce and rob. There's more, Richard said quietly. He pulled up another set of messages. These are from the week Diana saw them together. Watch what Lori says to David. Lori, the maid saw us. Diana. Shit, what do? Same thing we always do. Silence her. How? I have some thallium left from last time. We'll start with anyone she talks to. Make her look crazy. Make her look like the killer. By the time we're done, no one will believe anything she says. Thallium, a poison that causes neurological damage, organ failure, and death. Hard to detect, even harder to treat. Dorothy had mentioned it once, said one of her charity friends lost a family member to thallium poisoning back in the 80s. It was called the poisoner's poison because it was so difficult to trace, and Lori had used it to murder Marcus, to put my daughter in a coma, to nearly kill Diana. I have something else, Richard said. He looked uncomfortable. You need to see this, but it's going to hurt. He played a video, security footage from a hotel in Midtown Atlanta. Lori and David checking in together, kissing in the elevator. The date stamp showed it was from 3 weeks ago, a Thursday afternoon. The same Thursday, I told Lori I had back-to-back meetings all day and wouldn't be home until late. She'd been betraying me in every possible way. While I was working to provide for her to give her a good life, she was planning how to kill my family and steal everything I'd built. Thomas cleared his throat. Lawrence, we have enough here to have her arrested. Multiple counts of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud. She's going away for life. Do it, I said. My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. Empty. Call Detective Martinez. Give her everything. I want Lori arrested today. What about David? Richard asked. Him too, both of them. I want them both to pay for what they've done. 4 hours later, Detective Martinez came to the hospital where I was sitting with Melissa. She hadn't woken up yet. Brandon was there, holding his sister's hand, talking to her about memories from when they were kids, hoping she could hear him, hoping she'd wake up. Mr. Mitchell, Martinez said quietly, can I speak with you outside? We stepped into the hallway. She looked tired but satisfied. We arrested Lori Henderson at 4 p.m. She's in custody. David Ross fled. We found his car abandoned at the airport. We've issued a warrant. He won't get far. Good. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just emptiness. The district attorney wants to meet with you tomorrow. They're building a case with the evidence your investigator found, plus Diana's testimony, plus the physical evidence from all 3 poisonings. She paused. She's going to go to prison for a very long time. I don't care how long. I just want her away from my family. There's something else. Martinez hesitated. The toxicology reports came back on your late wife, Dorothy. My blood went cold. What? We ran additional tests looking for thallium specifically. Mr. Mitchell, she took a breath of, your wife Dorothy died of thallium poisoning. Small doses over several months. The cancer masked the symptoms, but it was there, in her system, in her tissue samples. The world stopped. Dorothy didn't die of cancer. She was murdered. Lori had killed her, had poisoned her slowly over months, had probably met Dorothy at one of those charity events, befriended her, and then systematically poisoned her so she could step in and take her place. I couldn't speak, couldn't cry, couldn't do anything but stand there while my entire reality shattered around me. I'm so sorry, Martinez said. I can't imagine what you're feeling right now. But she was wrong, because I wasn't feeling anything. I'd gone numb, completely, utterly numb. I walked back into Melissa's room like a ghost. Brandon looked up, saw my face, and stood immediately. Dad, what happened? I told him everything. Watched my son's face go through shock, horror, rage, and finally, something that looked a lot like the numbness I felt. She killed Mom, Brandon said flatly. Lori killed our mother. I nodded, couldn't trust my voice. We sat there together, father and son, waiting for Brandon's sister to wake up, waiting for justice to be served, waiting for something that felt like it might be peace, but probably never would be. Because some betrayals are too deep to heal from. Some wounds never close. You just learn to live with the scars. The trial was a media circus. Black Widow of Buckhead, they called her. The news trucks camped outside the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions every time any of us arrived. My family's pain became entertainment for millions. But I didn't care about the media. I cared about justice. Diana had recovered enough to testify. She walked into that courtroom looking small and scared, but when she took the stand, her voice was steady. She told the jury everything. What she'd seen that night, how Lori had threatened her, how everyone she tried to tell ended up poisoned. The prosecutor, a fierce woman named Janet Williams, pulled up those text messages on a screen for the whole courtroom to see. "Miss Henderson," she said, reading from Lori's phone. "Same thing we always do. Silence her. Can you tell the court what you meant by that?" Lori sat at the defense table looking nothing like the woman I'd married. Orange jumpsuit, no makeup, hair pulled back. She wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Her lawyer, a slick guy named Davidson, tried everything. Argued the texts were taken out of context. Suggested Diana was the real killer and had framed Lori. Claimed the thallium could have come from anywhere. But the evidence was overwhelming. Richard Cole's investigation had been thorough. Bank records showing Lori had ordered thallium online 6 months earlier. Video footage of her at the hotel with David. Testimony from her previous husband's family members about her pattern of behavior. And then there was Dorothy. The medical examiner testified about the thallium found in Dorothy's remains. Explained how long-term low-dose exposure would mimic cancer symptoms. How Lori had befriended Dorothy at a charity luncheon 9 months before she died. How Dorothy had mentioned feeling sick after their coffee dates, but attributed it to chemotherapy side effects. I sat there listening to how my wife was murdered, and I felt something inside me crack. Not break, it had already broken, but crack deeper, to a place I didn't know existed. When it was my turn to testify, I walked up to that stand feeling ancient, 90 years old instead of 69. Janet Williams was gentle with me, asked about meeting Lori, about our marriage, about when things started to seem strange. "Mr. Mitchell, when did you first suspect your wife might be involved in the poisonings?" "When Diana got sick," I said. "Up until then, I thought Diana might be responsible. But when she collapsed the same way Marcus and Melissa did," I paused. I realized someone was setting her up, and the only person who had opportunity for all 3 incidents was Lori. "Did you confront your wife?" "No. I hired an investigator instead. Let the evidence speak for itself." "And how did you feel when you learned the truth about her identity? About her past? About what she'd done to your late wife?" How did I feel? Like someone had reached into my chest and torn out everything that made me human. Like I'd failed Dorothy by bringing her murderer into our home. Like I'd endangered my children because I was too lonely and stupid to see what was right in front of me. Destroyed, I said simply. I felt destroyed. The most powerful testimony came from Dr. Patricia Hayes, who treated all 3 victims. She explained thallium poisoning in detail. How it works, how it kills, how much Lori had used on each victim. In Marcus Riley's case, she used a lethal dose, Dr. Hayes explained. She wanted him dead quickly. With Melissa Mitchell and Diana Washington, she used smaller doses, not intended to kill immediately, but to incapacitate and cause symptoms that would confuse investigators. Why would she do that? Janet Williams asked. Because dead people tell no tales, but sick people who look like they might be poisoners create a convenient scapegoat. The jury was riveted. I could see it in their faces. Horror, disgust, anger. When David Ross was finally caught, they found him in Miami trying to board a boat to Cuba. He cut a deal, testified against Lori in exchange for a reduced sentence, stood up on that stand and confirmed everything. The affair, the plan, the previous husbands, everything. She's done this 4 times now, he said, not looking at Lori. I'm not proud of my part in it, but I'm done. I'm done covering for her. I'm done pretending that what we did was anything other than evil. Lori's lawyer tried to paint David as the mastermind, suggested he'd manipulated Lori. But nobody was buying it. Not after those text messages. Not after hearing how she'd systematically poisoned Dorothy for months. Not after learning about her 3 previous husbands and the trail of suspicious deaths she'd left in her wake. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 4 counts of attempted murder. 1 count of murder in the 1st degree for Marcus. One count of murder in the first degree for Dorothy. Multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and theft. When the judge read the verdicts, Lori finally looked up. Finally met my eyes. And you know what I saw? Not remorse, not regret, just anger. Anger that she'd been caught, that her plan hadn't worked, that she wouldn't get my money. She stood for sentencing 2 weeks later. The judge, a black woman in her 60s who reminded me of Dorothy, looked at Lori with cold eyes. Miss Watson, in my 30 years on the bench, I have never seen such calculated evil. You systematically murdered 2 people and attempted to murder 3 others, all in pursuit of money. You targeted a grieving widower. You poisoned his dying wife. You endangered his children. You have shown no remorse, no humanity, no recognition of the magnitude of your crimes. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Dorothy Mitchell. I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Marcus Riley. These sentences will run consecutively. You will never be free again. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed out to break the news. Lori's lawyer started shouting about appeals, but it was over. Finally, mercifully, over. I sat there feeling nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, just tired. So goddamn tired. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, microphones in our faces, questions shouted over each other. Mr. Mitchell, how do you feel? Will you forgive her? What message do you have for other elderly victims of romance scams? Brandon pushed them away, clearing a path to our car. Jasmine, who'd flown in from college for the verdict, held my arm, keeping me steady. Dad, she said softly as we drove away from the courthouse. It's over. She can't hurt us anymore. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that justice meant closure, that punishment meant peace. But I knew better, because Melissa was still in a coma, because Dorothy was still dead, because I brought evil into my home with my own hands. Some mistakes you don't recover from, you just survive them. 6 weeks after the sentencing, Melissa woke up. I was sitting in her hospital room, same as I did every day when her fingers twitched. Then her eyes opened. Slowly, like someone waking from a very long sleep. Daddy, her voice was scratchy, weak, but it was her voice. My baby girl's voice. I started crying, couldn't help it, grabbed her hand and pressed it to my face. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. The doctors said it was a miracle, said most people with that level of poisoning never woke up, said if we'd gotten her to the hospital 10 minutes later, she would have died, said she'd have a long recovery ahead, physical therapy, memory issues, organ damage that might never fully heal. I didn't care about any of that. She was alive. She was awake. She knew who I was. The whole family came to the hospital that day. Brandon left work mid-meeting. Jasmine skipped her classes. We all stood around Melissa's bed, crying and laughing and thanking God for giving her back to us. Did they catch her? Melissa asked that evening. The woman who did this? She's in prison, I told her. For life. She'll never hurt anyone again. Melissa nodded, closed her eyes. Good, that's good. Diana came to visit a few days later. She'd left Atlanta after the trial. Too many memories, too much trauma. But she came back to see Melissa, to see the girl she tried to save. They hugged for a long time, both of them crying. Thank you, Melissa said. Thank you for trying to warn me, for trying to protect us. I'm sorry I didn't do more, Diana replied. I'm sorry I didn't tell your father sooner. You did everything you could. You almost died for us. Diana stayed for an hour. We talked about everything and nothing. About Marcus, about what happened, about how to move forward when the past is so heavy. Before she left, Diana pulled me aside. Mr. Mitchell, I want you to know something. What happened? All of it. It wasn't your fault. You're a good man who got taken advantage of by an evil woman. That's not on you. But it was on me. At least partly. I'd ignored the red flags, rushed into marriage, let loneliness cloud my judgment, brought a monster into my home. I should have listened to my gut, I said. Should have paid attention when things felt off. We all miss things when we're grieving, Diana said gently. When we're hurt. That's what people like Lori count on. They're predators. They know how to spot vulnerable people and exploit them. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed to hear that. But it didn't make the guilt go away. Melissa came home 3 months after waking up. We had a wheelchair ramp installed. Hired a nurse. set up a bedroom for her on the first floor since stairs were still difficult. Brandon and Jasmine took turns staying at the house to help. The mansion felt different now, lighter somehow, like Lori's presence had been a darkness we didn't recognize until it was gone. We had Dorothy's pictures put back up, brought back some of her furniture from storage, planted new flowers in her garden. We were healing, slowly, painfully, but healing. One Sunday evening, about 6 months after the trial ended, we were all sitting in the dining room. Me, Brandon, Melissa in her wheelchair, and Jasmine. We just finished dinner. Nothing fancy, just grilled chicken and vegetables. But we were together, a family again. "Dad," Brandon said, pouring himself more iced tea. "I've been thinking about the house, about all the companies. What are your plans?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're 70 now. You've been through hell. Don't you think it's time to slow down? Enjoy life a little?" I looked around the table at my children. Melissa was getting stronger every day. Jasmine was doing well in school, talking about becoming a therapist so she could help people who've been through trauma. Brandon had taken over most of the day-to-day business operations, and he was good at it. Better than me in some ways. "You're right," I said. "I think it is time." Over the next year, I gradually retired, gave Brandon control of the companies, set up trust funds for all 3 kids, made sure they'd never have to worry about money. Started spending my days differently, reading, gardening, volunteering at the community center Dorothy had built. I met with a therapist twice a week, worked through my guilt, my anger, my grief, learned that I couldn't have prevented what Lori did, learned that forgiveness of myself, not of her, was possible, learned that life goes on even after betrayal. I visited Dorothy's grave every Sunday, told her about the kids, about Melissa's recovery, about how we'd caught her killer, about how sorry I was that I didn't protect her. One Sunday, about 2 years after everything happened, I was at the cemetery when an elderly woman approached. She was black, maybe 75, with kind eyes and white hair pulled back in a bun. "Excuse me," she said. "You're Lawrence Mitchell, aren't you?" "Yes, ma'am." "I thought I recognized you from the news, about that trial." She paused. "My name is Ruth Johnson. I lost my husband to a woman just like your Lori, took everything we had and left him to die. I just wanted to say thank you for fighting, for getting justice, for showing that these predators can be caught." We stood there, 2 strangers bonded by similar tragedy, and talked for over an hour. She told me about her husband. I told her about Dorothy, about Melissa, about how we were putting our lives back together piece by piece. "Does it ever stop hurting?" I asked her. Her husband had died 15 years ago. "No," she said honestly, "but it hurts less, and you learn to carry it better. You learn that surviving is its own kind of victory." I think about that conversation a lot now, about survival as victory. Today I'm 73 years old. Melissa has recovered enough to live independently again, though she still has health issues. Brandon got married last year, small wedding, nothing fancy. Jasmine finished her degree and is in grad school. They're all thriving despite everything. And me, I'm learning to be okay. Not happy. I'm not sure I'll ever be truly happy again, but okay. Content. At peace with the scars. I sold the mansion last month. Too many memories, good and bad. Bought a smaller place in Decatur. Something manageable. Something that feels like mine instead of ours. I never dated again. Never even considered it. My heart went through enough. I'm content with my own company, with my children's company, with my memories of Dorothy. Sometimes people ask me if I've forgiven Lori. The answer is no. I don't forgive her for murdering my wife, for poisoning my daughter, for killing Marcus and trying to kill Diana. Some things are unforgivable, but I forgive myself. That's what therapy taught me. That I can acknowledge my mistakes, the rushed marriage, the ignored warnings, without letting them define me. That being fooled by a master manipulator doesn't make me a fool. It makes me human. If you've watched this whole story, thank you. Thank you for bearing witness to my pain. Thank you for understanding that betrayal comes in many forms. Thank you for being here. If you've ever been taken advantage of, if you've ever let loneliness cloud your judgment, if you've ever ignored your gut because you desperately wanted something to be true, I want you to know you're not alone. You're not stupid. You're not worthless. You're human. And being human means sometimes we trust the wrong people. Sometimes we see what we want to see instead of what's really there. Sometimes we get hurt, but we survive, we heal, we learn, and we keep going. That's all any of us can do. My name is Lawrence Mitchell. I'm 73 years old. I've been betrayed, broken, and nearly destroyed, but I'm still here, still standing, still grateful for every day I get with my children, every memory I have of Dorothy, every breath I take in this complicated, difficult, beautiful life. That's my story. That's my truth. That's my testimony. If it helped even one person, if it made one person more cautious, or gave one victim the courage to speak up, or reminded one lonely soul that rushing into love can be dangerous, then telling it was worth it. Peace don't come cheap, and it don't come easy, but it comes. Eventually, if you keep walking forward, it comes. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of my healing. Now go hug your family, trust your gut, and remember, being alone is better than being with someone who wants to destroy you. That's the last lesson I learned, and I pray you never have to learn it the way I did. God bless you. Wherever you are in this world, whatever you're going through, God bless you. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And if you ever see someone who seems too good to be true, too perfect, too convenient, trust that feeling in your gut. It might just save your life. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Your engagement helps me keep telling these stories. Stay safe out there. Peace.